Hey everyone, I'm Katie,
And Chelsea.
and we're some of the founders of MADVOTERS. We're an Indiana nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing equity in Indiana through education, outreach, and advocacy. And we are here today with Nick Marshall, a resident of Clark County and a former candidate who ran for Indiana State Senate District 45 in 2022.
That is correct.
So, Nick, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Um, me myself, I was a foster youth in the state of Kentucky since I was an infant. My mom battled with drug addiction and alcoholism, and my dad only met about five or a handful of times. But if it wasn't for the man upstairs and two wonderful sets of foster parents, I wouldn't be the person I am. And so that has compelled me to help others in that capacity. And that's how I decided to go about my campaign in 2022.
Awesome. So let's take it back a little bit. You ran for state senate in 2022. You briefly touched on your motivation to run. So I want to talk a little bit more about that motivation and then some of the challenges that you faced when you were running.
I think what really motivated me, not only what those foster parents instilled in me, I wanted to give back to the community, but it was really my little brother. He kicked my butt. And so it was one of the days I actually had a great honor of speaking at the governor's mansion in Kentucky for a foster care and a adoptive ceremony for the state of Kentucky. And I left that and I told one of the foster families that came to witness me talk, I said, I don't know what the Lord wants me to do. And the mother patted me on my chest and said, he'll let you know, dude, and we'll pray for you. And so that same night I met with my brother. He said, I need to talk to you about something. I said, okay, let's sit down and let's eat and let's see what's going on. And so we sat down and ate. And I said, you want to talk to me? He goes, yeah, I needed to talk to you about this. I go ahead. He goes, Nick, remember you told us we can't be superheroes? And I go, yeah, because something personally was going on in our family. He said, Nick, forget that. Forget that. Look at you up there with people that can make a difference. The governor, people that can make change. We can't do anything. You can. You made it. I need you to do something, Nick. Do something. And the story gives me chills each time I tell it because it's the truth. Now I'm being very, very vague of the language that he was using in Olive Garden, but in that moment he was right. And I'd always been in the back, and I'd always been in the background helping individuals with nonprofit and volunteer work. And if it helped somebody, I moved on to the next project. And so, but that's what really motivated me. It took my little brother to tell me, say I needed to do a little bit more. And that's why I went about my campaign. If it helped somebody by me telling my story, I've already won. So that's how I went about that. Now, to speak of some of the challenges that were faced during my candidacy in 2022, I think one of the things were the educational aspects of the remapping of the districts.
Yes.
A lot of people that you interacted with didn't know what districts they were in. And also I had other people from old districts reach out to me. That was the old District 45. And they didn't have anybody representing them. And so, I had to educate them and tell them, hey, what was going on and what happened. And I think another thing was fundraising. And what I mean by that is necessarily I didn't know how to do it. And two things that reminded me of that, because I knew the hurt in the community. And it was hard for me to ask people for money, knowing that they were going through the pandemic, going to food pantries, going to soup kitchens during inflation to truly ask for money. And that was the other part and about it, because I knew the community, I knew the hurt, and I couldn't ask. But now understanding what it's going to take to have an effective campaign, I know that now, because one of those foster parents always made do what you said, make do what you got. And so that's what I did. So I just put my nose to the grind and went out there door to door. And then, any hiccup that came about, I prayed about it and then went about working about it.
So when people, you kind of touched on people wanting to support campaigns or having to ask for money. What are other ways people can get involved with the campaign if they can't financially donate? How can people support these candidates? So
I think it's all about time, talent, and also we just talked about treasure. And I really,
T's.
what?
All the three T's.
The three T's.
Yeah.
And there was some volunteers that committed their time and to do that. There was a great individual that I found someone that loved doing postage. And I was like, that is a thing, and they love doing it. And so they were telling me how the mail system worked, how this stuff worked, and they wanted to go about putting out the postcards that I put out, setting up those volunteer hours, and how to put out the letters. What did I need to make the adjustments on the postcards to make it more legible and meaningful and impactful to the people we were sending it out. And and she would just keep me on task with that, and ask would I have any more, because she would send it out. And so I think that's one of the things. You just go in there. The other, there's the time, the talent. I think another thing is you saw that talent in that person that loved to do that, but also seeking younger talent to give them a project to be a part of, and be a part of something bigger than themselves, to let them learn some skills and assets. But I think those are the three T's are most impactful: the time, talent, and treasures. But if you can't do the treasure, take your time and use your talents wisely.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think that's really helpful, because people, they want to get involved and we just don't know how. So I think that's great. And I also love what you said about engaging young people, helping them feel like they're part of this and getting them involved like that. Because it absolutely is, we're not just trying to fix or things right now, we're trying to build down the road. So you're laying foundations for others.
I want to say as well, you said you thought you were doing a lot of good, and that's a discussion I bring up a lot, is that we've all been doing a lot of good, but we were putting a band-aid over the problem rather than taking the steps to fix the problem, which running for Senate, huge way to help fix that problem. Activism, doing rather than saying. These are all things that we need to do to rip the band-aid off and let the cuts heal.
Yes,
absolutely. So you're still involved in your community these days. You work with nonprofit. What do you consider some of the top issues facing Hoosiers? And then how do you propose we solve those? And I know we're not going to, get this fixed in the next 30, 45 minutes, but what are some of the big issues, and then some solutions that we can at least start trying to work through?
I think it's so during the pandemic, everything was shut down. And so, coming from a servant mentality of going to help the community, it was hard not being able to go out there. And you should have seen my beard when it grew out. It's really strange. But then I found this mobile food pantry that started giving out food, and just kept showing up and going there. And you saw the hurt once again in the community of what was going on. And that hurt is still going on right now. And one of the biggest things is, how are people living from paycheck to paycheck? And now I literally still, to this day, it's 3 years, I still help with that mobile food pantry. And just got done dropping food off this Wednesday. And they're serving 60 to 65 cars a week. And and that's the thing too, is that is a problem that we need to fix. How do we go about helping people from going paycheck to paycheck, or who are on Social Security or Medicaid benefits and stuff like that have to make that hard decision, even with their food stamps being cut, I've got to get that $60 somewhere else. And that's what that food pantry is doing.
Yes.
And I think another issue is homelessness and the opioid situation. And if you just dive into your community, you'll be able to see it. We also serve at at an actual food kitchen. And so there was one day where someone alerted us that someone was face down on the ground. And immediately your thought is there's an overdose. And so, luckily we had a volunteer firefighter there. He ran to go get Narcan, and, I went to go run over to the individual to see what was going on. I said, sir, and didn't respond. And then turned him over, and you heard the gasp for air. And that's when I thought, hey, this is an overdose. This is what's going on. And when I went to go sternum rub him, and I said, sir, and I went to go down, and that's when he came to. and he started to breathe, but he was passed out due to alcoholism. And so, those are the things that are going on, and those are everyday human beings. And like, yes, we're not going to solve that issue overnight. It's going to take proper steps to getting rehabilitation correctly done. Making sure that, they get the help they need. And people are not looking for handouts. They're looking for a hand up. And that's the situation where we have to arise at. And, there's nothing more beneficial than there was a lady that was there, and I'd seen her at the food kitchen for over 3 or 4 months. And, now I don't see her anymore, because she said 2 or 3 months ago, she said, we finally got our apartment. We're not living in our car. And, she has a good job, and the kids are doing, the kids, we don't see them anymore. But, look at that. We wrapped around resources around, and we called, we got clothes, we did this. And the community aspect is there to help. We just have to be willing to do the work.
Awesome.
Mhm.
You need to trademark that phrase too. People are looking for a hand up, not a hand out.
Yes.
Absolutely. Judging people and, looking at people with stereotypes, that doesn't help, doesn't solve the problem. We have to start sort of unraveling the threads causing all these issues with poverty, drugs, things like that, like you mentioned, and that's how we solve these problems. So hand ups, not hand outs. I think that's really good. Let's see. So our organization, Mad Voters, is dedicated to advancing equity in Indiana. So the work we do, from the legislation we track to the outreach and education we provide, we base that on our 5 values. And so that's equitable and accessible healthcare, equitable education, principles of democracy, economic equity, and then community development. So I want to touch on a few of those issues too while we're talking. So one of those values that we saw get a lot of attention, not in a great way, this past session, was education. For Mad Voters, we want to ensure that students have access to safe and affirming educational environments. That's really important to us. We also want to guarantee schools are equitably funded and free from interference from outside agendas. So unfortunately, we did see a lot of bills target schools, public school funding, targeting LGBTQ students, silencing teachers, funneling funding away from public schools. So my question here, as far as education is concerned, what's maybe some of the reasons behind these attacks on education? Where is this coming from?
I think it's just misguided of what teachers go through. Coming from an aspect of teachers that have been very pivotal in my life. One of those foster parents from the farm, she was a teacher, and she just taught me how to be just gentle and kind to everyone. And she would go teach at the elementary level, and at the same time she would be home taking care of foster kids, adopted kids, and her own biological kids. So you look at that, teachers wrap their arms around students, and we don't pay them enough. They take money out of their pocket to make sure that a kid is eating, a kid has clothes. They're psychologically there too as well. And it's really strange that it was a teacher that got me out of an abusive situation and neglect when we were in kinship care with our aunt and uncle. And so if it wasn't for the bravery of my sister of finally speaking out, we wouldn't have been taken out of that situation. We would continue to be abused. So they're sitting there listening to all this going on. And they're also being psychologists and therapists, and these things are going on. And sometimes you confide into a teacher that sometimes they can't go home and talk to their parents about that. And that's really something that's very heroic to do. And even that, even in my high school career, I was placed in an alternative school, labeled a bad kid, and I remember being, I would get in the alternative school, I would get my work done in about 5 to 10 minutes, and I go over in the corner and I say, yes, sir, no, ma'am. I'd be polite, or I put my head down and get, and go to take a nap or just go to sleep. So I wouldn't cause any trouble. And so one day, one of the teachers, he pulled me over to the side and he goes, what are you doing here? I go, it's a school. What do you think? This was supposed to be here. He goes, no, what are you doing in this school? I go, well, sir, I'm in a group home. This is where they put me, and this is where I'm going to be. He goes, you're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be here. And I go, well, hey, it is what it is. He goes, come talk to me after class each day, and we'll see what we can do for you. And so after a couple of weeks of getting to know him, he goes, okay, I want to take you on a Black college tour. And I was like, group home's not gonna let me do that. He goes, let me talk to him. And because at that moment I lost all hope in going to college, because in a group home, in an alternative school, what's next? What else can go wrong? And so he ended up talking to the group home, and they saw that my GPA was outstanding. I had not caused any trouble in the group home, and they approved me to go on the Black college tour. And because of that, and going on that tour, I was able to say, yes, I want to go back to college. How do we get me out of this situation? And that started the process of doing that. But you've got to understand that teachers are just misunderstood, and they do so many different things, and they take the weight of it, but they're not paid enough as well. So I think it's just misguided and not truly understand. If we take the time to reflect on what teachers did for us, and truly know what the stakes that are they're taking on, is I think that we would have a little bit more empathy for our teachers.
Absolutely, well said.
Mhm.
Completely agree there.
I want to say Katie was a teacher.
There you go.
And
Yes.
I make it a point anytime somebody tells me they're a teacher, I always thank them,
Mhm.
because these are the people who are literally raising children
Mhm.
who are not at home. They've got them 8 hours a day sometimes, and they're raising your children. Not only do you owe them respect and appreciation, but these teachers are struggling, and all the parents should be stepping up to help when they can.
Yes.
Because we want them to be in a positive headspace and to feel appreciated so that they can do their job properly.
Definitely.
And I think a little bit as well. I think parents got a taste of that a little bit in COVID. You got a taste of that a little bit in COVID. Like, wait, I got my kid here for 8 hours. How do I make sure their education is on task and doing correctly? And wow, I don't realize how much I underappreciated teachers. And I think they got a little taste of that. Now, once again, things are misguided and misunderstood, but if we show some empathy and the understanding, we'll be able to get teachers the places they need to go, and need to be at, and help the children where they need to go.
Right. And I want to say,
Mhm.
parents who got a taste of that during COVID, I want to ask you what your plan is if the schools around you were to fail because of the voucher system pulling money out. We really have to consider this. You may have to go either back to homeschooling, or you're going to have to find a way to get them to a school that is much further away from you. We have to appreciate these teachers, especially the ones that are working in these rural schools.
Yes.
They're driving out there. They don't really live out there. They're driving out from the city and stuff like that. And, when those schools fail because of the voucher system, these families are going to be really hurting. I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. You touched on a thing as very pivotal. And, coming from a farm into the big city of Louisville, I've seen how the school system with busing and situations happen, how they move people in big cities and Louisville, and being a part of that, to being in a rural area from that 40-acre farm with that foster family. It was 30 minutes to get to school. And there was only 2 elementary schools, and the high school and the middle school were right next to each other. So that's a situation. Look at what happens when the funding runs out. What happens, or what are you going to do? You've got to now figure out a way to get your child to education. And it's hard enough, being on that farm and going 30 minutes. Now it's going to be an hour.
Yeah, the buses go first too.
The buses go first too. And being coming from the farm family, there's things you got to do before you leave the farm. I remember being on that farm, and we had to break the ice during the winter for the pond so the cows could drink. And then we threw out the feed for them for their grain out to them, at least right before the morning. And then we got back in the house, showered, and then ran to the bus. So, I understand that aspect of that rural life and living the way it is. And I think we don't necessarily think about that until we're in and live entrenched in it. So you touched on a really deep thing there, that our rural areas are going to be the ones that are going to hit the most. And if that education is there for them, that is their way to make it better for their families and learn a lot more too as well, and give them different avenues. So I think, yes, the funding is, not being properly placed. But then the real question is, what happens when they start to question the voucher system, the charter schools? Are they going to start scrutinize the same thing they did to public education? Let's think about the future. They're going to do the same thing to charter schools, and what is going to happen then? That's nobody's really thinking about that, because once they get done with public education, they're going to go to the charter schools and try to minimize and maximize, the dollars as well.
See all private educations and then homeschoolers. And unfortunately, not all of us are cut out to be homeschoolers.
Yes.
It's all
Or
based
can
on
afford
religion.
it, or can't afford it.
Yeah, I mean, and besides the finances, I'm a homeschooler myself,
Mhm.
and it takes a lot.
Mhm.
And it takes, for me, I don't know if I could have done it as a single parent. So for me, it's like it takes more than one adult. You
Mhm.
need a system of adults to really achieve that. And in
Mhm.
rural communities, you may not have a neighbor for 5 miles.
Mhm.
Who are you going to turn to when things go south and you have to homeschool 7 kids?
Yes.
That's a lot.
Mhm.
And I think too, we have to, sort of help people see, like you were talking about down the future, help people kind of see the connections. In a lot of rural communities, people love their public school. It's the
Yes.
center of the community. It's where they go on Friday nights to see the ball games and things like that. But at the same time, driving through my rural community where I live, you can see there's a lot of support for politicians who are trying their very best to funnel dollars away from these public schools. So I think one thing that we're trying to do with MADVOTERS, and there's so many other organizations too, and candidates and legislators, there are people working to try to help people connect the dots and realize if public schools are important to you, and they are to most people in the community, then we need to keep these public dollars here with our schools. We need to respect our teachers. We need to, like you said, think about the teachers you had. Most people had great experiences and they can recount, an elementary school teacher or a coach or someone who, or multiple ones who affected their lives in positive ways. And so, we hear people start jumping on these extremism bandwagons or joining extremist groups. And they're saying, well, I want to protect my kids. I want to, and that's, we get it. Of course, people want to protect their kids, but I would just encourage people, to really think the groups I'm joining, the legislators I'm voting for, do they really have my kids' best interest at heart? Because we're really seeing, I think, like a weaponization of fear. Parents want the best for their kids. And of course, things got crazy with COVID and it was just very unstable. So the fear of what's my kid learning and who's teaching them and all that, I get the fear, right? Sure. But there are so many ways for people to be plugged in with teachers and with schools and volunteering at the school. Joining and supporting extremist movements, that's not helping at all.
Yeah, no, we have to support our communities, and that includes our schools.
Definitely, absolutely. I want to turn it over to Chelsea to ask a few questions, and also too, for the folks that are watching, if you've got questions, drop them in the chat. I'm here at the end, we can go over them.
Yeah, okay. Well, another one of our values is what we call principles of democracy. We're seeing both on a national level as well as our state house a real assault on the very foundations of democracy, really. There's attempts to restrict voting. There's culture wars and ideology driving legislation, including theology.
Absolutely.
There's been censorship, book banning, and that's one of the reasons that we're focusing on voter outreach so much. We need to meet people where they are and really make sure that they have the information that they need to get to the polls And I mean, we ranked so low
Mm.
on voter turnouts. I want to say it was like
47.
yeah,
45,
47.
47.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Depending on what race you look at, it's
Yeah.
very low.
Absolutely. And, there are a lot of problems facing our state right now, and a lot of people feel very overwhelmed, very disenfranchised. I'm a very positive person, and I feel like you have also been a very positive person.
Mhm.
What makes you optimistic about Indiana?
Let me say, my past makes me optimistic about anything. Um, and we see these things are happening, um, and voting, enthusiasm, book bannings, and stuff like that. That is the narrative that is being controlled and pushed.
Yes.
What if let's be optimistic about that? Let's change the narrative. How would Indiana look if we had a balanced house? If we had a balanced Senate, we would not be 45 or 47. We would be in voting. We wouldn't be in these lower tier things that are state. There is optimism of that. So let's change the narrative. Say, okay, what would your community look like if every person was engaged and wanted to be a part of the system? That make sure that democracy is balanced and fair and balanced for everything, where one side can be heard and the other one can be heard as well. And I think it's already there. And as I was listening to the audiobook on my way up here, is based on community, and the title is Community. The cure is already there. And you see it in everyday people working together. I'll give you quick three stories. One is when I first moved over to Jeffersonville, Indiana, a fire broke out to one of my neighbors. It didn't matter if there was an R or a D by their name. The other neighbor ran across the street, busted the window out, and told them to wake up and get them out of the house. And got them out of the house. It didn't matter if they were R or D.
Mhm.
The gentleman that started that mobile food pantry, it didn't matter. He was a Marine. He served our country, but he said, I'm going to serve again. And said, I don't care who you are. Pull up here. If you need food, here's food. And then a couple weeks ago, I was, on my way to work, and there was a homeless person laid out on the what's the name, on the grass across the street on the gas station. And I saw this lady walk out and look at him, and then walk back to her car and grab a blanket and put it over him as the rain was about to start up. That's true humanity, right? All three of those is true humanity. It doesn't matter who you are. When I go help somebody, I don't ask if they're a Democrat or a Republican. Ask them, how can I help you? And can you tell me about yourself? And I think the cure is already there, and we're already working towards it. I mean, the cure is already there. We just have to activate and acknowledge that, hey, we need to start talking to our neighbors again. And I think the isolation of COVID and the situation that happened with that, I think that we have more in common than anything. And I think there's some people on the other side as well that's saying, okay, I'm not fully on board with what's going on, but I wish someone would come and talk to me.
Sure.
And be civil. And I encountered that during my during my campaign. I said, this is me and this is my opponent, and you have a choice to make. And the person I told that to, we were at a fair in Charlestown. They said, you got my vote already. I go, wait, what? And she goes, you said not one bad thing about the opposition. You just told you what you cared about and how you wanted to help. You got my vote. And she checked in with me about a month before the election too. She said, I just want to check on you. Been monitoring the campaign. I just, I'm glad what you're doing. And that's the thing. And even though I did not win, I got back out and still went out there and helped the community and didn't stop. And it doesn't matter if you're, if you're an R or D, it's basic humanity, and the cure is already there.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And the politics really have ruined that sense of community. There's so much divisiveness. Like yourself, I do a lot of work in my community, and I would never even dream to ask somebody their political affiliations before I help them.
Yeah.
Right.
But that does seem to be a huge deciding factor in a lot of this. For example, there are people in my family who vote Republican because that's just how they've always voted, but they're not seeing policies. And so it's like we have to get people out of this mindset. Don't just vote D, don't just vote R, really put the time in and understand what you're voting for, not just the person, but the policy behind the person.
Yes.
We have to stop looking at the D and the R like it's the end all be all of politics. Humans, we are a part of politics. Our party doesn't make us, we make the party.
Yeah, that is correct. And I give you one more instance with the LGBTQ ban that was coming. And I kind of stayed silent, and then it passed. And then I made a post that we should be acceptable to all our community members, and it's not right what is going on at the State House. And someone sent me a message. And I said, one, let's take this off. Let's take this off Facebook and actually call me. And they were shocked that I gave them my number. And this is after the election. This has nothing to do with the situation. And I gave them my number and I called them. And they called me and they said, oh, I'm just amazed that you're actually going to sit here and talk to me. I said, no, let's talk through this. Let's see what's going on with this. And I said, and that person gave their point and said what they believed in. And I said, I want you to think about something. This is the reason I posted this, is because we're not even get to have the conversation we're having right now. It's automatically being shut down. And that person goes, I never really thought about it that way. Now, I said, let's walk through this. Let's go through this. But not enough people see those conversations going on in the background or see the policy that actually is being talked about. And we can't even get to the table about it. You can hide behind the social media, but when you can actually have the meaningful conversation with the person and show them what is going on, and say, okay, no, I understand what you're saying, and this is what this is about, and this is what this is about. But can we reach an agreement on something that we're not even having a chance to do this? And they said, thank you so much. And not going to go into what they said afterwards. But they just said, thank you so much. And not many people would do that. So that's what we have to do. We have to get on the phone and start talking to people and say, okay, here's my thoughts, and you talked about faith a little bit. I'm a person of faith, and, like I said, I thank the man upstairs every day because I'm the only one that made it. But, what is the same thing we should do with our faith? We're supposed to share our faith. Now, what you do with that is up to you. That is what you do with it. I am not to push my faith on you. I'm supposed to share it. And so that's what we have to do. We have to share with one another and be able to have this dialogue and conversation, and we'll find the true cure and humanity in all of our conversations.
Absolutely. And it's, a lot of the culture wars and you mentioned earlier, just a lot of the issues coming at our state house. These aren't local issues, really. They're distractions.
Yes.
Some of them claim to be solutions to solve a problem when the problem doesn't really exist. And then the solution that's proposed itself is a problem. So I think you're spot on when it's about going back to the community and really focusing on the connections and how can I help my neighbor, my community member. Not to say policies in Washington don't affect us, they do.
Yes.
But MADVOTERS, we're a state organization. We want to focus on Indiana. We want to focus on our counties and our communities and everything like that. And so I think that's absolutely correct, is being able to have those hard conversations with people and get on the phone, like you said.
And one more thing before we move on is the ability to be able to say, okay, all right, I see you, I understand you. Now let's go through this policy. All right. And we've got to go through the policy and say, okay, does this policy work? What is this policy doing? And then is this good for us? And we're starting to see policies that are starting to alienate and divide us. And that's what they truly want to do. And they're like you said, they're distractions. And it's easier to divide. It's harder to unite. And that's the true thing there. If you unite, then that you've won. And so let me say that you have to go about it a different way. And that's what I tried to do. And then that's what was taught to me. I was raised by conservatives and liberals. And so I get a balance of both. So I'm like, okay, kind of cool. Let's talk about this, you know? But I just wanted to say that, yeah, it's easier to divide than unite. And it's, you can sit over there in your little corner, but if I come out and I come to you and I talk to you, and some people have came up to me and saying, you sound like a Republican. I go, yeah, but also, I'm here to listen and learn and to talk. But I might not understand everything that's going on with them. And there's some things that are not going on, but hey, let's talk. But yeah, that's where it is.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, another big priority for us is trying to get people to run in Indiana. And, we are all very aware that our Democratic candidates have not had a lot of backing in our state, not a ton of support, unfortunately. Again, lots of disenfranchised voters means not as much donations. They want their money to go to something that they think is a worthy cause. And unfortunately, they just haven't seen enough movement from one side. What advice would you give to people who maybe are thinking about running?
And I think I said this on election night, step out on faith. You never know what you're going to learn. I remember the day I announced and I was scared out my mind. I didn't know what I was getting into. I just looked at myself in the mirror and said, I trust you. I trust you, Lord. Get me through this. And I learned so much. I connected with my community. And that's the first step, is just to step out on faith. And the way that you're going to grow and know your community is, even if it comes out, I love this quote because I was in a training that said, even if it came out 60-40, you made headway.
Oh, absolutely.
You made headway. And there's been so many times I've been at an event in the community or just hanging out at the bar, which happened 3 weeks ago. I was hanging out at the bar and I'm closing my tab and they go, "You're Nick Marshall." I'm like, "Wait, what?" It's like, "Yeah, you ran for office last year. I wish you would have won." And I was like, and it's weird. And you see the impact in the people that you meet and you walk down the street, and there's a difference that be made, and you shed a little light for them. So I say, step out on faith, don't be afraid, and be yourself. And if you be yourself, you can be so impactful. It'll just carry. And that's one of some of the things and advice I would give. And to the enthusiasm part, let me say, Indiana Democrats, I know you're beaten up. I know you're tired, but get back up one more time. I got back up after the election 2 days and I went back out there to help the community. The Lord told me, get back up. You got to go out there. I rested on Wednesday, just rested, and I stayed home and I was just like, just kind of chilled out. But then something told me to get up Thursday. Get up Thursday, go back out there and help. And that's what you have to do. And that's what we have to do. We have to get back out there and help our communities. And even if you lose, you've impacted somebody. And, just get back up one more time and fight with us. Yes, that's what I say.
Yes.
That sounds a lot like,
Yeah.
the day after the election, and a few of us were texting and we're like, okay, we'll take some time off, but let's get, we all kind of come from different backgrounds, but we know we're frustrated and we want to help make Indiana better. So let's take a break, take a breather, because we were volunteering on campaigns and all that stuff. And we didn't take a day. But I think, it's just this idea, and I get it, it's frustrating, you want to go and win it. But what you're saying is you sort of have to shift your mindset. It's not about winning. It's about putting down stepping stones.
Yes.
For people in the future.
Yeah.
And the parable of the sowseer, this seed sower, and you don't know what your seeds are gonna sprout.
Oh yeah. And
you don't know where you're sowing them as well. And you might see somebody out there and they see you. And this made this kind of just, I would tell my son, when I was campaigning because we hadn't had our daughter yet. Daughter came in the middle of the campaign. But every time I went out there, and my son was like, "Daddy, where are you going?" I go, "Daddy's going to go learn to go help people." So it's not politics; it's learning to go help people. If you that mindset of shifting to go, he goes, "Oh, okay, okay," and then right, and then I would have the news on, and he would turn around and be like, "Daddy, you're a Democrat." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "And you're running, right?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, you better win. I'm just gonna win." If you and I go, "What happens if I lose?" He goes, "I'm gonna be upset." And I go, "It's okay. It's okay. It's gonna be okay." And then we told him we walked like a week later because we thought he really was gonna get upset. So we waited a week after the election, and we told him like, Daddy lost. He goes, "Oh, okay. So you got in second place, right?" I was like, I go, "Yeah, you're kind of right." He goes, "Yeah, you still did good."
Take advice from kids.
Yeah. If you look at it like a kid, and he was just so amazing with it. But then also the other point when you're, like I said, you're out there, and there was this little girl, she was a biracial girl, and we're handing out back to school back in August, back to school bash, and we're handing out notebooks for her. And she looks up at me and she goes, pink's my favorite color. Let's find you a pink notebook. Let's do this. Let's go find it. So we're going to find it. She goes, "Yeah, pink is my favorite color." I go, "I can tell because the shirt you have." And she goes, "What is my second favorite color is?" I go, "No, tell me." She goes, "It's yellow." I go, "That's my son's favorite color. That's really cool." And so we're having this dialogue. We get her notebooks and we're talking. And she goes, "Well, I got to go to the next booth." She goes, "You have a nice day." I go, "You have a nice day and you have a wonderful school year." And so, and I was like, "Oh, that was good." And so the little girl takes 2 steps and then turns around and smiles back at me. And I just sat there and like that. And then somebody grabbed me and goes, "Nick, did you see that?" I go, "Yes, I did." He goes, "Every minute being here was worth that, wasn't it?" I go, "Yes, it was," because she saw someone that looked like her, that was out in the community helping. And that's the connection you can make as well. They want to see you out there. They want to see you there working. And if they do, it's going to bring the connection point will be so much more than what you think. You never know who's watching.
Oh, absolutely. And like that representation, I mean, on all levels, like I say, let's not let a single seat go unfilled because even in these towns, like, let's talk about sundown towns. We have a couple of those in Indiana. There are children there right now who don't believe the same things as the other people. They need to see people step up and run for these positions that say, no, it is not okay for it to be like this here. They need to know that they're not alone. During the abortion ban, we're protesting outside the State House and I'm holding the sign and, and I've got a friend who's like, "How do we know that we're really doing anything?" I said, "You see that car that went by there? There was a little girl in the back seat. She saw us standing out here fighting for her rights. She may not understand it right now, but she's going to remember it. We have to make sure that even when we're talking in a restaurant, in a library, make sure that you are saying things that you're okay with other people hearing. And for me, I don't ever want to leave a room and having made somebody feel some kind of way negative, like, hopeless with all the things that are going on. I want to leave the room and I want to leave them feeling positive. If not about the situation, then at least about their ability to handle the situation.
And that's the thing too. You never know what people are thinking and they're waiting for you to say it. And I tell you something that hit me dramatically when we found out during the campaign that we were going to have a girl. It rocked my world. And I'm thinking every dad has this conversation in their head. And I'm sitting at the kitchen table and in my head, it goes, what if something happens to her? It is different. When you're a girl, you're a dad of a girl, your mind switches. And so I said, what if something happens to her? What if somebody wants to control her body? And all these thoughts are going on in my head. And my wife goes, "Hey," I go, "What?" She goes, what's wrong? I go, she goes, "Were you thinking about something?" I go, "No, I'm good." She goes, "No, you were thinking about something. What was going on?" And I had to tell her the conversation that was going on in my head. Every father has had that conversation with a little girl. And it's okay to have that conversation in your head. And if I'm saying this right now, there's some dad that's like, thank you for saying that. Because I've had that conversation And I don't want something to happen to my daughter or my granddaughter or my wife,
Sure.
or aunt, or, or something like that. These are real conversations that are being had. And that's what we do when we're out there and we're being candidates or we're being people in the public sphere or in the community. You've got to, like you said, you've got to say something that somebody's wanting you to say. And when you say it, you've touched them. Now, what they do with it is up to them. But you've now planted that seed, and we don't know when it's going to sprout. Mm.
So you were talking about just like, all this advice people running for office. I just want to make a plug. We have till July 3rd,
Yes.
so people can get on the ballot.
Oh, for 2023.
Yes. So we've got till July 3rd, folks who are watching. You want to start with reaching out to your county party, and if you don't know how to do that, send us a message, madvoters@gmail.com. You don't have to have $1 million in the bank. You don't have to have a degree in politics or history or anything like that. I mean, you have to have a passion for helping people, a desire to see your community thrive. And that's something that, we have a lot of folks who fit the bill. So don't let, this fear of, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough experience, just do it. I mean, we're here to help. We've got candidates with experience that are here to help.
Yes.
You want to support and build and make a better Indiana for ourselves, for our kids, and so I would just really encourage people, if you're thinking about it, do it. Go for it. They're municipal elections. You've got city and you've got town spots, and you've got till July 3rd to get on the ballot if there's still vacancies. So there's my little plug.
Now, what's the worst that can happen?
Exactly.
You lose, but you have name recognition. You have people in the community that look to you, and that in itself puts you in a better position to help, because people know that they can come to you with problems.
And those stepping stones down.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we talked about this a little bit before, but tell us as much as you want or as little as you want. Do you have any plans for the future as far as?
I will say I do have plans, and what they're now, we're me and my family are negotiating those plans, and the most important voter is my wife. And if I can't get her on board, then I can't do anything.
Sure.
And so there are some options that are displayed for 2024, or the other option is help organizations like you or candidates out there to get ready for their elections in 2024 or future races. We build that infrastructure, we build it out, we help the candidates, and we make it easier for the next person to run. I think, like I said earlier, if we had the infrastructure in place and it made it easier for someone to run, when I ran, I reached out to the person and they were not even involved. And so I had to go find that person to learn how to run or what to do and what the makeup was. And if that's in place and we can get taking some of the burden off, that would be very good. That's one of the things I recommend as well.
Yes.
But as of right now, there is no 2020. There is a 2024 plan and maybe a 2026 plan, but I know that whatever this come, it was kind of weird that I had this fantastic day with my son about 2 months ago, and I dropped him off to daycare, and we're laughing, we're listening to songs, having a good time. And I dropped him off. I got in the car and I sat down. And I go, "How did that feel?" And my head goes, "You're ready." And it was so humbling and scary because my head, heart, and body were ready to run again.
Yeah.
And so that's what you have to do when you also, my advice is make sure everything is in order before you run too. If we could go back to that. But I just want to say, get up one more time, Indiana. And if you get up and we lose together, we'll still make headway. And I think one of the main goals that we should focus on in 2024 is the House. I mean, the state rep seats are up. We have an opportunity to flip some of those seats. If we focus on that, we can stop some of these policies and make it a fair and balanced Indiana. And we go about it the right way. We go about talking to the other side. They are not the opposition. They are not the I'm sorry, they're not the enemy. They are just opposition. They are everyday humans just like you. And if we're able just to talk to them, to the other side, to say, I know you feel this way. I know what's going on in your heart. And they don't have to know what you voted for. But if you want to stop people leaving this state, your grandchildren, families, and people like that leaving this state, what is it going to take? We want you to stay here. We want you to have the economic mobility. We want to be able to make sure that your grandchildren and your children make over $50,000 and be able to, pay back their student loans, invest back into Indiana, and that way you don't have to travel to another state to see your grandchildren. And that's the thing. How do we make Indiana better than what it is? And that's something we need to project to as well. So, and it starts by doing it in 2024 and flipping the house.
Yeah, we need balance for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm a big believer in balanced governments and everybody should have say.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, before we end, I personally am very interested in hearing what you have to say about messaging. I feel like on the progressive side of things, because of the gerrymandering and how hard it can be to get somewhere in Indiana, we have a lot of very jaded progressives who have been running on these either campaigns or these messages of it's the voters' fault. If you would just show up, I could win. And I think that there is a whole new generation of Democrats or progressives or whatever that want to change that book, a whole new playbook full of positive messaging and encouragement and lifting each other up instead of a handout, a hand up. How do you feel about that?
So one, I want to speak to the younger voters. I'm at the weird age gap where I'm not old, but I'm not young, which is weird because everybody comes to me like, what are you, like 24, 26? I'm like, thank you. I'll take it. But I'm in that age gap where, I see the older generation and I see the younger generation too. They are scared of the younger generation. Harness that. They are scared of you. Harness it and take it what you want to do with it. You have the solution. And the best quote I heard from this book is that the present is the future. So if we invest in our present time, they will be able to make headway any way that we want to do. And by doing that is we have to hand it off to them. Say, it's okay. You might fall, but we'll be there to pick you up. And going into the messaging of things is it goes back to those everyday conversations we're having of being positive. What does a Indiana look like with a balanced state house? What does a Indiana look like when you're making over $50,000 instead of $19? What is it like if you don't have to struggle to pay for rent? What does it look like when a teacher can invest in their kids they're teaching? What does it look like when everybody has rights? That's the thing. That's the messages. You got to put it out there and for people to do. And, and we've got to understand we do have progressive that do want rapid change and things like that. But a step is progress. And a step, I think, who is it? The mayor of Mayor Adams. He says progress is progressive. Even though sometimes we might take a step back, there's more steps forward than that is. So when that step back happens, let's evaluate what happened, what we do wrong, so we can move forward in the right direction. So the messaging has to be, okay, what does a better Indiana look like? What does progress look like, even if it is a step? And we have to be able to go out there and talk to one another and stop being in our silos. And that's one of my things with the work I do now is we call it coalition building. We have one group that says they're a rock star in doing this. And then there's another small organization over here that's trying to do it that just started up. Bring them together. Bring them together and say, okay, let's do this. Let's work together. And I think you and Jessica, wasn't it? Jessica?
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, hey, you guys are working the same thing. Get together And it started from what, 3 or 4 ladies, and you ended up at an event having over 50 to 75 people. And I'm like, just also when that happens, we have to learn to step back and let it grow itself.
Yeah,
Don't be pushy. Just check in every now and then. But you look at that. We have to start saying, okay, this group is doing this. This group is doing this. Come together. Let's talk about it, and let's see how we can build this out. And that's coalition building to its point, and that brings a better community as well.
Yeah. If we're all building wheels
Mhm.
to carry one vehicle, we're wasting our time.
Yes.
If we can get together and build the wheels that we need,
Mhm.
the vehicle's gonna move, right?
Definitely.
Working smarter, not harder.
Yeah, and then to go along with the messaging, any child psychologist will tell you, if you give children positive affirmations,
Yes.
they will have positive attitudes. It is the same with grown-ups. It's the same with everybody. If you give them something positive to look forward to,
Mhm.
something positive to think right then, their attitudes do change. And it doesn't happen overnight.
Mhm.
It takes time
Mhm.
and it takes messaging, not constantly, but you have to get that message to them some way.
Mhm.
And you have to make sure that you keep sending that message.
Mhm.
People are scared, they're depressed, they're angry. The positive messaging and the affirmations,
Mhm.
Indiana's gonna be okay. You're doing as best as you can.
Mhm.
We understand where you're coming from. All of this kind of messaging, I think, is really super valuable
Yes.
to what we're doing. I don't think we're gonna make any progress without that positive messaging.
Yes. And then if you fall, get back up.
Yeah,
Let's go at it again.
Yeah.
What did we learn from this? And how do we move forward? And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most things as well. So I've been set back in life a lot. And I could have stayed back. I could have that my little brother challenged me, and I could have just said, no, I'm good. I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with my life the way it is. And this is the biggest moment I'll ever have. But no, get out of your comfort zone. Go out there. It may ruffle some feathers, but that's what's gonna take to make a better Indiana and a better nation. And these questions have to be posed to how do we want to move forward? And if democracy, rights, and the ability to love who you want to, and the ability to be who you want to is on the line. Think about somebody that needs you to hear that needs you to say that and let them know that it's okay. It's okay. I'm gonna be okay. Let's not run. Let's stay here and fight. And that they hear that you've made a connection, and you then see what it sprouts to.
yeah,
Mhm.
I love that.
Mhm.
They do. I told a candidate that I'm working for recently, I said, to me, the people who are stepping up to run, who are pro-democracy, right now, to me, they're American heroes.
Mhm.
Sure.
Because
absolutely.
this is a hard time, and the people who are willing to step up to even attempt to make change,
Mhm.
that's a hero to me. That is a patriot to me.
Mhm.
That is somebody who loves democracy and loves America.
Mhm.
And so me personally, I would like to say thank you
Mhm.
for doing what you did and putting yourself in that position,
Mhm.
because not everybody has that.
Sure.
Not everybody has the privilege
Mhm.
to do that. Not everybody comes where we come from with a partner to support them and all that. And so I think anytime somebody steps up, not only are you a hero to democracy, but you're a hero to the American people, because we get to look up to you.
Yeah.
Truly, absolutely. That's very well said.
And I think what we have to do is, and I was talking with someone that was thinking about running, as well as the other part is we go back and help people who are running currently, learn from them, do what you can. But I was telling the candidate that was thinking about running, I said, what you have to do is, he's a military person. And I said, what you really use, you embody patriotism. You do. And how do you feel about that when people use that word? And he goes, I served my country and I did this, that, and the other. And I just feel very disrespected when something happens like that. Sure. And it made me think of that the foster family from Louisville. He was a Vietnam veteran. And he was a very stern, hard man. But when he got around kids, he was the softest person in the world. And so he taught me what respect was and what patriotism was, because he had already served his country. But he decided to, once again, just like that person did the food pantry, I'm gonna serve my community again by taking in these kids and helping them with these lessons and stuff like that. You go and serve again. And that's what you have to do, is think about that. And he passed away 3 years ago. And you know, I just, when I think of patriotism, I think about him. And you know, and my opponent last what's his name? In 2022, he's a military person as well. And I couldn't disrespect him because he served our country. And I called him and I told him, said, we come from similar backgrounds. You served our country. And you know, and this is, I just want to let you know that, I'm gonna be praying for you. He goes, I was waiting for you to say something bad. Why didn't you? I said, those are the reasons why. And the pure humanity in it, and makes me think, I don't see myself as a hero. I don't. I just see myself as just a human being trying to help. And the empathy and compassion that was shown to me by complete strangers, I wouldn't be sitting on this couch right now. So, but humbled, and thank you for your words.
You're so welcome. I think Michelle Obama said it best when she said, when they go low, we go high.
Mhm.
And I really feel like that has been a very big part of your platform, obviously. And even though you didn't win, I still think that it was a very successful campaign,
Mhm.
because that message got out, and that name recognition of, yeah, Nick Marshall, he's a good guy,
Mhm.
and hopefully that will carry you through whatever else you do in your community, whether you run or not. I think that name recognition is going to take you a long way, at least when it comes to respect from your community, for sure. Nick, thank you so much for being here today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. If people would like to get in contact with you, how can they go about that?
Email, N as in Nancy, L as in Lee, M as in Marshall, A as in Apple, R as in Roger, S as in Sam, 12@gmail.com. I will respond. I don't like emails setting in my queue.